Welcome to another episode of Custom Cards. Instead of doing an entire set review, this time we're looking at user submissions. So I want to thank everybody for submitting their cards, and of course a huge shout out to Yuri for carrying these type of videos every single time. And without any further ado, let's jump into the first card. We're going to start with a little bit of a meme submission. The Anti-Yordle Protesters, submitted by Glitched Mango. 4 mana 2/5 from Noxus. When the enemy summons a Yordle, granted -2, -0. So this card is obviously meant to embody our collective suffering the past few months. The meta has kind of been a breeding ground for Yordle decks for a while now, so let's hope that with the newest hotfix and the balance patch coming in January, the game will finally be Yordle free again. But looking at this card a bit more objectively, a card that targets one very specific archetype would of course never be in the game. But the concept of reducing enemies' power when summoned can be quite interesting. It should probably be balanced a little bit by having the effect be like the first time the opponent summons a unit each round, granted -2, -0. And with that kind of effect, it would probably be able to be printed, with some more balancing of course, and find a home in something like a fearsome deck that includes Noxus. And speaking of Yordles, up next we have a new addition to the dual region champions, Corki, made by the Victory XD. So Corki is a 3 mana 1/4 from Bandle City and Targon. When I'm summoned or round start, create a missile delivery in hand, or if you already have one, increase its cost by 1. Level up, you've summoned 8+ mana of units directly from your deck. A Missile Delivery is a 1 mana slow speed spell. Summon a follower with my cost from your deck. So it's a bit weird to have Corki be a Targon champion, but the creator gave a short explanation and Ziggs proved that region doesn't matter anyway, so let's not get too distracted by that because his effect is actually very interesting. The fact that he has a mechanic that increases the cost of a spell seems pretty counterproductive, especially in a region like Targon, but summoning high cost followers from your deck can yield an insane amount of value if you let it stack up. Sadly, his spell doesn't work with Celestials because you invoke into your hand, but a card that comes to mind pretty quickly is something like the Mirror Mage, especially because Mirror Mage would level him instantly. But let's see what Corki has to deliver on his level 2. When Corki levels up, he becomes elusive. When I'm summoned, round start or Nexus Strike, create the package in hand, or if you already have one, reduce its cost by 1. And the package is a 2 mana slow speed spell. Summon a follower from your deck with the same cost as a card in your hand or an ally. If no such follower exists, summon an equivalent Celestial instead. So with this level 2 ability, Corki starts to benefit from you having big Celestials in your hand to use the package on, and Corki even makes it possible to essentially summon Celestials from your hand for free. This kind of effect lets Corki be a budget version of Aurelion Soul that can be worked with way earlier, but also needs way more maintenance to actually make work. Alternatively, he could find a place in Victor Mirror Mage decks because he makes it way more likely to get the mage on board without straight up losing on that same turn that you summon the Mirror Mage. All in all, great concept and one of the best examples that you can create a good design for a champion without forcing their mechanics from League onto a card. And the next card is made by Nolan, who somehow managed to deliver something great every single time he participates in these submissions. And this time, it's the Trash Compactor. 2 mana 2/2 from Piltover, Augment. When I'm discarded, grant allied copies of me everywhere, +2/+2, and Overwhelm. So the Trash Compactor takes the mechanic of the silent package of cards benefiting from being discarded and combines it with the PNZ concept of cloning cards. So this card would give these cloning decks a true win con besides just the Cheerian Sump Workers, and I very much like how he managed to pull that off and still make it feel very unique. My only nitpick is that Nolan could have made this card grant impact instead of overwhelm, so that discarding multiple Trash Compactors actually lets you get multiple stacks of impact every time you discard, so there is some actual benefit from discarding multiple copies, but that's a very minor thing, so all in all, just great job, Nolan. So the people who participated in the submissions may know that we have a little special something going on later on in the video, and that might include a certain old man. And it seemed that Discord member ELNUK, BIRB King, got inspired by that and created a card that has an effect so easily usable by that old man. 3 mana 3/4, Aspirant Stoneweaver. When you summon a landmark, advance it 1 round. I bet that old man and the time bomb that he summons makes a lot of sense when you look at this. And while a card like this may not be as deck defining as some other cards in this video, but I would just describe it as a feels good card. Having this on board will just make it so much more satisfying to actually summon landmarks. And you can think of cards like Preservarium, the Horde, or, of course, instantly exploding your time bombs. And this next card is something that we don't see very often at all. Ramp Support. 5 mana 3/4 from Freljord, True Ice Hag. Play Frostbite an enemy. If you have more mana gems than your opponent, set its power to 0. So if you're able to summon a card like this on the board, it makes playing all these mana ramping cards just way more satisfying. because it means you get some actual good payoff instead of just having more mana than your opponent. The fact that the effect also doesn't require a skill to resolve means that it will go straight through a spell shield, making it an excellent counter to Fade decks and the occasional Lee Sin. You know, considering that they let you play a unit before 100 to 0ing your Nexus. And the next two cards were actually made by the same person, Discord member Bomba Kabomba. The first one is the Dune Crawler Egg, a 1-mana landmark from Shurima. When I'm summoned, summon a Spiderling. Countdown 2, summon 2 Spiderlings. And the Dune Crawler Horror, 4-mana 5/4. If you have 3 other spider allies, enemies have -1, -0. The creator even wrote a small bit on the cards, so let's see what they have to say about their spiders. It's been a long time since we've seen spiders, and seeing that there are spiders in Shurima in the card Vukaran Safecracker, and they never elaborated on adding new spiders for Shurima, it's such a missed opportunity. So I am here to submit Shuriman spiders, but what makes Shuriman spiders different than Noxus or Shadow Owl spiders? Well, let's get into the spiders we have right now. Shadow Owls is the core spider line you must have in your deck because Elise is the only spider champion in the game, and C is SI. So most spider stuff comes from there. Now let's look at Noxus and what makes their spiders different. They have 4 spiders and 2 of them buff whole board full of spiders. It is one of the themes Noxus has of buffing the whole board like Arena Battlecaster and Mechacaster. SI also have a wide board buff spider, and it's Frenzied Skitterer. This card also gives enemies -1 attack, which Noxus doesn't have access to, and it's especially useful for their Fearsome keyword. Now SI is the core spider, and the upper half of Skitterer is similar to Noxus' game plan. Then what about his lower part? Well, that's where Shurima spiders come in. You see, one of Shurima's pies is debuffing enemy attacks, and you see that in many cards they have. So far, a spider line that is in Shurima will make perfect sense that their game plan is to debuff enemies' attack, so they can attack with Fearsome plus at least level 2 Fearsome Aura. So first of all, huge thanks for explaining these cards to Bomba Kabomba, because this made it way easier to get behind the designs and what thought went into these cards. He perfectly managed to work spiders into Shurima and make them perfectly believable. The idea of making the spider embrace the attack reducing archetype is just genius, and the condition for the effect to be active is also just chef's kiss. I'm also very impressed by the choice of having a spider landmark that feels so believable and should be very fun to play with, especially with that card that we saw before that reduces the countdown by 1 for landmarks. Up next is the Dark Saint by Kaizen. 4 mana 1/4 from Demacia. When you summon a unit from a spell, grant it +2/+2. So having a card like this in a region like Demacia is a great choice because of all their unit summoning cards like Remembrance or For the Fallen. The fairly recent addition of Jace's package, especially Assembly Line, gives this card a very powerful place in a deck that is already not that bad. Having this on the board and getting 2 5/5s from one single spell can give you an insane board presence instantly. Another deck where this could shine is something like Demacia Spiders, which we've seen some of with the Poppy Elise deck, because Spiderlings that you can summon from cheap spells like Valve Feast or Crawling Sensation get +2/+2 on summon while they turn into a real threat. It also makes the deck way less vulnerable to Fearsome units, because having the +2 attack on a Spiderling actually allows you to block Fearsome units. All in all, a very flexible card that can go into several decks and fill a very strong role in them. The next card we have is a spell from Bandle City that finally uses the face-up type. Whack a Fae by Thunder Lunari. Whack a Fae is a 2-mana slow speed spell from Bandle City. Create a random Fae in hand and a hammer. And hammer is a 3-mana fast speed spell with no rarity gem, so you can't actually put it in your deck. A Yordle or an ally with impact strikes a unit. If it dies, create a Whack a Fae in hand. Having a card that creates a random Fae in hand is a very strong addition at the moment because we don't have many of those, which means that the chance of getting a Loping Telescope is pretty high, which makes the potential value of this card just skyrocket. But by now we all know that you always have infinite cards when playing Bandle, so at least it also keeps that region identity. The fast spell you get from it seems counterproductive at first, because to use it you can't really utilize the Fae you got. Instead, you need to use this with a Yordle or a unit with impact. Luckily, there is a certain new champion that got added with the most recent expansion, Rumble. And playing this card in a Rumble deck will give you a Fae to potentially discard, and it generates a card to help you level Rumble. Very much like Whirling Death has been doing in Rumble decks. And this even has the additional benefit of potentially generating you even more value if the target you're striking dies. Which is quite likely because Rumble hits like a truck with his 5 attack. And, you know, as a resident Rumble enjoyer, he's basically been my most played champion of the new expansion. I would absolutely love this card in a Rumble deck, because leveling him and generating Mecha Yordles is very fun. So yeah, this card is embracing the nature of Bandle City while supporting a new champion and feeling very believable in that region. So great job. Up next is a card with a very weird but funny name to pronounce, the Ice Sorcerer by Firelight Popper. A 4-mana 3/3 from Freljord. Play Manifest an 8+ cost follower from your regions. This very simple card is achieving something that Freljord is usually quite bad at: generating value. Usually going against Regen Identity is a bad thing, but this card does it very, very well. It has a very simple effect that can especially help all the Trundle cards, because you can include a few less A+ cards in your main deck that at the moment run the risk of completely bricking your hand. The value this card generates is also not instant, rather it gives you something you can play later on, while still giving you a fearsome blocker to use immediately. This delayed value generation is exactly how it should be done in Freljord, and it's a perfect example on how to break Regen Identity without breaking the card. Very nice job, Popper. And last, but certainly not least, we have a card that is made for one of the newest archetypes in Runeterra, Faded. Discord member K-Red tried to create a card that gives Faded decks a bit of an alternate win con besides Pantheon, the Storm Dragon. 6 mana 3/4 from Targon, Faded, Fury, and Lifesteal. When you cast a spell targeting only me, cast it again on a random ally with Faded. And it is a dragon. So usually we're not the biggest fans of custom cards with more than 2 keywords, but the Faded package clearly showed that it's possible with cards like Campor or Pantheon himself even. Having a Faded unit with Lifesteal is a very risky move because it can grow out of control very, very quickly and become almost impossible to kill while keeping your Nexus healthy. Another problem is that as a 6-drop for Faded decks, this card is just better than Campor in every perceivable way. I would probably increase the cost of this a bit to make it more justifiable, but still, very nice card and a bold choice to use the new Faded keyword for a custom card. And as the final part of this video, and as teased earlier, we have a little special section during this submission cycle, where me and Yuri came up with a theme, and everyone could create their own take on it. And the theme this time was how to make everyone's favorite Chronomancer, Zilean, viable. And all of the cards submitted for this were amazing. So amazing, in fact, that we decided to include multiple cards, which was not really the plan going into this, but it means you get a little bit of a longer custom card video, so I'm not complaining. So even for the cards that didn't make it, you all did an amazing job, and you really should not feel discouraged for next time. And the first card we have is the Time Band, made by ELNUK Bird King. 3 mana 2/4 from Shurima. Play, draw a Time Bomb, then predict. If there aren't any to draw, create 2 of them in your deck instead. So drawing a Time Bomb the turn after Zilean is played brings insane consistency to the Time Bombs, which is exactly what the deck needs the most. And even if you can't really pull that play off, you still get the value of generating more Time Bombs in your deck and possibly still getting one because of the predict. I like that this card is only a 2/4, which is almost the same as Zilean. And with this card being a 2/4, it should actually leave the deck to be very vulnerable to fearsome units, which is a weakness that the deck already had. So it's kind of nice to see that ELNUK decided to go against just removing that and keeping that weakness intact. And the next card is really as simple and necessary as a card can get for Zilean. Time Lord. 1 mana 1/1 from Shurima. When I'm summoned or round end, shuffle a Time Bomb into your deck, made by MNC Dover. This card is the ultimate enabler that Zilean needs, and with that, a complete archetype defining card. So it's really nice to see that the creator made this a 1 mana card, because those are usually the archetype enablers. Playing an important card like this on turn 1 is going to be very satisfying on the level of Teemo or Zoe, because it sets up your entire deck for later. And the fact that it's only a 1/1 is really smart and a genius move really, because you can't let a value engine like that get out of control too much. The opponent can remove this very easily, but the value generated if the Time Lord stays alive just keep ramping up with every turn that passes. The opponent will be able to remove this card very easily, but the value you generate if the Time Lord stays alive just keeps ramping up with every single turn that passes. And time passing, turns passing, also feels very Zilean-like. And the last card we have for today is a card with a name as epic as the final one should be, the Heart of Time, made by Kennen Electric Chair Tap. So Yuri made me some notes and he literally wrote, what the hell is that name? Alright, so 4 mana landmark. Play, draw a Zilean. I'm sorry. Alright, 4 mana landmark from Shurima. Play, draw a Zilean, then predict. Transform copies of the chosen card in deck into Time Bombs. Countdown 1, summon a Clockling. So here we have the Zilean boat. And I actually love the choice of having it be a landmark, because that's exactly how it should be in a Zilean deck. Having it only be a 4 cost makes sense too, because Zilean is often removed quite quickly, and he also benefits a lot from being played again. So it's kind of nice to see that being embraced with this landmark. This card also synergizes extremely well with the region most played with Zilean, Piltover and Zon. Cards like Counterfeit Copies or Practical Perfectionist may generate you cards in your deck that you don't necessarily want in there, and this card lets you recycle them. Or if you're playing against Ionia, and you will never be able to attack with something like Yukiri because you will just get stunned, just turn them all into Time Bombs. It's as easy as that to counter Ionia. I wish. And then, after you get that effect, you even get a clockling after the countdown finishes to use as a small blocker, very akin to how Ancient Preparations is used. And so, as already said before, all of these zilean cards were made extremely well, and the ones chosen could even be played on curve with the old man himself. And all I can say is that I wish for every single one of these cards that I could play them in actual decks. And with that, we have reached the end of another custom card video. I hope you enjoyed this one as much as the last one, and if you want to submit your own created cards, make sure you join the Discord and keep an eye on when we're open for another submission cycle. We always make a big announcement for it, and they usually happen monthly or so. So me, Yuri, and the creative team want to wish all of you a very Merry Christmas, and if you're not celebrating Christmas, just a very merry happy, and I hope you get to spend time with your loved ones. Make sure to comment with what your favorite card was from this submission cycle. Tell me how you use these cards in your own deck, and I really hope to see you next time.